Hi, Brian. Oh.
Hello.
All right, guys. Hello. Hello, everyone. I am your host, Megan Bolter. So thank you for joining today's virtual event. We have representation from Vistaprint and Yansys as well. So for today's discussion, our event speakers will answer questions and openly share and discuss Vistaprint's S4 Hana journey, leveraging a brownfield migration followed by a business transformation. So before we kick off today's discussion, I do want to remind you that we are recording the event and it will be available for on demand afterwards. Also, this is an interactive forum, so we encourage you to hop on camera and ask questions you may have along the way. If you'd like to ask a question, we ask that you utilize the Q&A feature or do the raise hand feature, and we'll call on you and answer in real time, whichever you prefer. But do please remember that this is a conversational virtual event. Our discussion will be much more valuable with the questions and interactions from the audience. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guests and our moderator. So we have Mukul Agrawal, and I probably butchered that, I apologize. He is the Global Head of ERP and IT Services at Vistaprint. So he's focused on digital transformation with smart technology solutions to deliver value to business functions like finance, financial planning and analysis, supply chain, procurement, manufacturing plants, and technology teams. And at Vistaprint, he has both SAP and non-SAP solutions, which provide a wide range of services to business partners for various business functions. So it's great to have you here, Mukul.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Thanks. Next, we have Dave Faget. He is SAP Managing Director at Yansys. So as that Managing Director of Yansys SAP's practice, Dave brings over 20 years of leadership experience within the SAP ecosystem and is focused on new and innovative technologies for ERP, cloud, and digital solutions, including S4 Hana, customer experience, analytics, digital supply chain, and IBP. So Dave focuses on organizations with a clear understanding of today's digital roadmap in a multitude of areas to ensure increased operations efficiencies and create new business models for customers. So Dave, happy to have you here.
Great, thanks, Megan. Yeah, it's wonderful to be here and look forward to seeing what kind of questions are out there.
Awesome. Also from Yansys, we have something exciting for the attendees on the call today. So Yansys has graciously offered a free S4 Hana roadmap assessment. So this 2-day workshop will provide you with the opportunity to connect with Yansys to identify tactical and strategic technology initiatives that will help address your company's pain points and your transformation goals as well. So again, a winner will be chosen at random at the end of the session, and you must be present to win. So stay on with us and we'll draw at the end of the session. But really great offering, and thank you, Yansys team.
You're welcome.
All right, our third introduction that I have is Lauren Reinhardts. So Lauren is COO and co-founder of Ascensource. As co-founder and chief operating officer at Ascensource, Lauren is dedicated to driving strategic growth for Ascensource partners, SAP customers and prospects, and SAP. So Lauren will be our moderator and facilitator of the discussion today. Thanks for joining us, Lauren.
Yes, happy to be here. Thank you.
All right. And then one last thing before I pass the baton over to Lauren. For those of you who are not familiar with Vistaprint, Vistaprint is a marketing partner of choice to over 17 million customers globally. They provide custom designed marketing products which boost customers' credibility and support their goals. Vistaprint supports a wide range of products and services, everything from business cards to stationery, all the way to digital products like websites, custom design services. They've made significant enhancements to their product selection, and today is one of the leading online providers of marketing services and products. So with an annual revenue of over $1.4 billion, they also have 7,000 team members across 29 offices and 6 manufacturing facilities worldwide. Their overarching business goals are to provide professional, quick, and affordable marketing solutions for small businesses. Therefore, the technology and supply chain must be able to support this fast pace and keep up with the ever-changing demands of the business. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Lauren and she'll lead the discussion with our guests.
Great. Thanks so much, Megan. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today. As Megan said, we encourage this to be interactive. So if you have a question, please use the raise your hand feature. We encourage you to come on camera and join the discussion. We want this to be as intimate as possible. And if you have a question, having done several of these, please don't wait until the end. Typically in these types of environments, there's a presentation and then we hold 15 minutes for a question. I have questions I want to ask, but really we want to make sure that you guys get your questions asked. So don't be shy, don't hold till the end. But as we get started today, I'd love to just kind of walk through at a high level the implementation that Vistaprint has started and kind of where you are, kind of walk us through what you're implementing, the time frame associated to kind of set the stage for today's discussion. So Mukul, I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you, Lauren. So that everyone has the correct background to start with, we started our business case exploration journey back in 2019, 2018, 2019 kind of time frame. We agreed with our leadership team on the value drivers, the metrics that we need to deliver, the business benefits that are going to come from SAP S4 implementation, basically a migration of brownfield migration from ECC to S4. A lot of that work went in. We finally agreed on an SAP contract in June 2019 and started the implementation in September 2019. So it was a very quick turnaround for us between the contracts versus the start of the project. So we did that keeping in mind the pre-planning that we have already done for the project. We went live in April 2020 with ECC to S4 migration. That included upgrade of the database, moving of the data centers from Vistaprint data center all the way to a partner data center, and did the entire upgrade as well on 1809. Since then, and you can imagine April 2020, how was it for everyone? Everyone was trying to figure out, how do I work remotely? How can I have a meeting when there are 3 kids running behind me all the time? So we still did the implementation. We could not travel to any of our manufacturing plants, which are 6 of them. We had plans for having a big war room celebration, and we couldn't do any of that stuff. And we still decided and chose to go live with that kind of a setting, because it was still, we were in a very good spot in terms of the risk, in terms of issues, in terms of concern areas. We had optimized our cutover, we have done enough mocks, and we were in a good state and felt confident to make that decision in March that we're going to stick to April 2020 go live. We did that. And since then, we have done a lot of optimistically targeted, carefully chosen transformations, and transformation that provides the most value to my controllership and my manufacturing organizations. As an example, we have done quite a bit of Fiori work. We are started on extended warehouse management journey as well. We have done a lot of work to disconnect from our network dependencies, because everyone's working remotely. Not everyone has the same bandwidth, not everyone has the same things. And we'll talk about some of these things as well during the session, but we have done quite a bit of work. And lastly, I will end this section is we upgraded from 1809 to 2020 as well in August 2021. So we went live with the upgraded version in practically 2 months back. So we are on a roll, and we want to do these upgrades every year and consume more of the standard SAP instead of bastardizing or customizing the system to the nth degree. So we are on that platform. We are using, I don't call it as a system, I call it as a platform that enables me to use SAC, Fiori, and different SAP capabilities and exploit them so that I can actually give the value to my business partners.
And just to add to that, Mukul, just, for everybody's, benefit, the Vistaprint database is a very large database with a lot of transactions. So, Mukul kind of mentioned the fact that there were some pre-planning activities that were occurring before the actual execution. And because of the size of the database, that was a pretty key thing to do, make sure that all the pre-planning, allowed for a smooth transition that Mukul just kind of walked through.
Yes, absolutely. It was a 9 terabyte database that we had to migrate, and we could not afford the downtime that that SAP standard solutions offered. So we had to come up with our creative ways of doing things. And yes, we were able to reduce that downtime to 48 hours for the entire go live. That too broken down over 2 weekends.
Wow.
So we were successfully able to do that.
Wow.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you signed your contract in June of 2019 with SAP and really started the implementation just a few short months after that. I'm curious if you can kind of talk to us about the conversations leading up to the decision to go to S4. What was the event that kind of triggered the kickoff of the project? Obviously there's this need to get off of ECC to S4. Why did you guys decide that now was the time for you?
I mean, that's a great question. And I'm sure a lot of customers are struggling to identify why now, why move now from ECC to S4. I have a couple of more years I can survive on ECC. Why do I want to do this investment now when we still do not know how pandemic is going to unfold and when it's going to end and how things are going to happen? So we did this work very carefully. We had identified what are our pain points, what are we not getting from ECC that we need to get out of a new system. So given Dave talked about our data set, if you imagine when you go to Vistaprint website, let's say you place an order for business card, how much money you're going to spend? $10 on a business card? And if we are $1.3 billion company, you can just do the math and figure out how many transactions we are talking about, an average order value being $35 to $40 per order. So you can do the math. So one of our biggest pain points was embedded analytics. We could not run a 1 month of GL report out of SAP in EC system for revenue transaction. We could not. And SAP S4 allows us to do that. And not just that, we had a lot of non-SAP reporting solutions that we had goals to decommission so that we can actually do real-time efficient reporting on transactions. And that was one big driver for us. The second driver was going into a more modern and intuitive user experience to reduce the time that it takes to hire train new hires when we either hire them on our companies for manufacturing or accounting processes, or we acquire a company and they need to be trained on it. Not everyone is familiar and want to have used GUI, SAP GUI before. So this is their nightmare to learn SAP GUI. So we had to do a lot of new features so that it is easier for the adoption of the users and create that excitement in our user community that, yes, I'm going to actually use a browser as an ERP, not a pre-installed GUI, which I don't even know how to navigate through the menu path of it. The other piece was, selfishly, as a technical head, I wanted to reduce the technical debt, not do a lot of ETL out of SAP, send it to another system, the delay in the time to report on that data. We want to eliminate a lot of that system, save more. So put the money, put the investment where you get the most value out of it, instead of, yes, you need to keep those systems running because, well, you still need to do the reporting, but that's going to cost you more to keep those legacy systems around. That was one of the reasons as well. And honestly, more business solutions. We can do custom solutions in Fiori. We can do SAP S4 standard solutions. We can expand the capabilities. Things that are not available in ECC, we could actually do in S4 HANA. And those capabilities allowed us to create a business case around, these are the reasons why we need to go and do ECC to S4 migration. And this is what it's going to make. Our decision point was, should we do greenfield versus brownfield? And one of the things that impacted that decision heavily was time to market. In my 25 years of SAP experience, both project types are valid. It depends on what your systems are, what your appetite is, what your talent is in the team, and what you're willing to consider as the reasons to doing greenfield versus brownfield. For me, time to market was very important. I was not willing to spend 3 years on a program that's going to take me from ECC to S4 in a greenfield. Practically, SAP is going to release 3 minor and 3 major versions in that 3 years. And design that you started 2 years back is outdated by the time you go live, or you're going to implement something that's not even relevant anymore because your business requirements change. So I wanted to shield ourselves and everyone in my business partners from a lot of that complex change in the first increment. That also allowed me to create excitement in my users incrementally, not as a greenfield, and say, now I can actually use SAP. Well, I can run a report out of SAP in 30 seconds instead of clicking and kicking off a job in the background. And here you go, in 6 hours, I will have my report. Now I created that excitement in my business partners that I now want to use SAP. Now the question came back is, what else can I get out of SAP? And that's the phase that I'm in right now, where my stakeholders are saying, okay, now show me, what else can you give me? Can you give me ability to collaborate within S4? Can you give me ability to attach documents and talk to their peers and put some notes when they're doing accounting posting and things like those? What else can you do? So one of the good changes, one of the really innovative changes that we should not say innovative, one of the decent changes that we went live with recently was you can actually use SAP Fiori on public internet. You do not need to be on VPN. You do not need to do certain things in order to use Fiori. I can practically, sorry, I'm just reaching for my cell phone. I can practically go to SAP using my cell phone at this point of time in front of you guys. So we implemented that mobile capability to an extent where you do not need VPN. It is device free. So in the remote world specifically, when there are so many supply chain challenges, if one of the employees' laptop goes bad, they can go to public library, go to Best Buy, go to Apple, get a new laptop. All they need is a URL to access SAP. That is it. And it is still Auth0 multi-factor, so it is still as secure as your GUI would be in order to access SAP. So people who are worried about security, we do have enough security, so you should not be worried about it. There are ways to do it. I'll take a pause here. I know I can talk a lot more.
Yeah, no, that was great. And I think, that ability to, access anywhere, if you had a crystal ball, that became a huge factor in the COVID world. You started this project before that all happened, but certainly, a benefit that you guys are able to realize today. I do want to spend a few moments and talk about your partnership with Ansys. Obviously, we've got Dave here with us. At what point during the software selection, decision making did you and Ansys kind of collaborate and start laying the foundation for what this implementation would look like?
Yeah, so we started that work in mid to late 2018. And Ansys, I have been working with Ansys for a couple of years now. And our partnership started even before we started considering S4 as a system or a software, as a solution, as a platform. So we started working through identifying why S4, what is the pre-planning that we need to do, how much of things can we fix in ECC in order to prepare for the migration to S4. And that's when some of the engagement with Ansys was really helpful and valuable, is getting the staff, getting the capacity, getting some of the know-how on certain things that we can do and actually break the SAP standard ways of doing it. Ansys team was flexible to experiment and research with us. Can we break the boundaries, standard ways of doing SAP and do something differently that we need and things that are going to work for our business? Eventually, we moved into software selection, implementation partner, and everything else. And yeah, guess what? Ansys is still here working with us on some of the new cutting edge technologies. And we all learn something every day. Both Ansys and Vistaprint teams have been doing tremendous amount of work, and they are really excited to work on things that we're implementing on a day-to-day basis.
And one thing I want to add to that is I think it was, a critical example where Vistaprint has shown the fact that you can do business transformation after a brownfield migration. I think there's a little bit misnomer out there in the industry that in order to take full advantage of all the new S4 capabilities, you have to do a greenfield implementation. And Vistaprint is a perfect example of how you can go ahead and take your current ECC environment with some of the IT debt there, and how to eliminate some of that while you move to the S4 environment, deliver value to the customer right away, but then continue to add transformational functionality on top of that. So that's one thing I think is very key about, how Mukul led this activity and the decision to make that brownfield first and then do transformation on top of it, while delivering value to the business immediately right away and then consistently going forward.
I mean, I'll add an example to it, a real life example, which is in our systems. We had a very clear mindset that getting time from our business partners to the effect when we are doing greenfield, we need to see that excitement in users. We need that collaboration, that partnership. And if people are not excited, it's not going to work out well for anyone. And especially if you're stretching that duration to a couple of quarters to 2-3 years duration and not keeping it consistent. So the experience that we gave our partners by doing Brownfield actually allowed us to create an excitement. And as a result, we got into a situation when we had to retire a system, a legacy database system, which was not even in my organization. And there was consideration that can we use SAP for some of these capabilities? And we actually did. We went live with one of the new custom Fiori apps, and it was custom. And that custom app is now actually used all the way to CEO of the company. I mean, we could not imagine our CEO using SAP for doing something. And now it is. All the way to C-level, all C-levels are using it to doing certain activities. So it created that opportunity to drive selective and very valuable transformation on specific areas. We modified some GL data, GL hierarchies. We did some work on cost center, profit center realignment. We have done a lot of work even on a controllership and accounting side that a lot of us assume cannot be done in a brownfield migration. It can be done. You just have to pick the first one that you want to do it as soon as you go live with brownfield. There is nothing that you cannot do in a brownfield migration that you have to do only in greenfield migration.
Yeah, so we've got a couple questions coming in from the audience. So thank you guys so much for submitting those. So I'll just kind of run through these if that's okay. First question from Dean: was the original ECC install customized?
So original ECC was customized, and I'm not saying S4 is not customized. S4 is also customized for the right business requirements, but it is comparatively less customized because we ended up going on more standard features. We deprecated some of the customizations. So yes, it was customized. We had, if I have to recall it, about 11,000 objects that we had to correct, development objects that we had to correct during the project, a 7-8 month long project. So it was no easy feat to correct 11,000 objects, but our team did pull that through. So it was customized, to be fair and honest, but we did deprecate things that we were not using. And that's where a lot of the pre-planning comes into play. You can measure the usage of your customizations in ECC. You can measure what is being used and what is not being used. Turn that features on a year before you're starting migrations, 6 months before you're starting migrations, and think and look at it, what is not being used, and start deprecating things that no one is using anymore. So those things are really going to help you to manage the risk that is associated to your brownfield migrations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a couple questions coming in kind of about brownfield. So what was the time lag between the brownfield migration and business transformation, in your opinion?
So we went live with S4 1809 in April 2020. And we took a 3 to 4 month pause and started doing the transformation activities. And the reason the pause was not the migration itself, but it was still trying to navigate through the COVID scenario. What are the different requirements? How do we change? Well, we need to focus first on these new things that we never had requirements before because of COVID. Now we have these as requirements. So let's address those requirements first, because that is required for our business as well. So we had to shift the focus a little bit for a few months. And then right after that, we were back on the transformation wagon. In April, not April, but actually in February, we finalized on a Ewm implementation. And that Ewm implementation is going live in February 2022 as well. So we never stopped. We never stopped coming out of ECC to S4 migration. We had our list ready. We had our areas ready that we need to transform on. It was a matter of changing the prioritization and which one goes first, which one goes second. And that was very much impacted by COVID itself, but not otherwise. We have been on the transformation bandwagon since we went live with S4. So S4 migration was a start, not the end of the journey. This is where we are, and this is where we start.
Great. And then other question come in. Can you talk about additional financial transformation effort that you had to consider for over 4 billion transactions? Did you have to do that because you chose Brownfield?
No, not necessary. As an example, whenever we talk about a global company with all the complexities of compliance requirements in Europe, Asia Pacific, US, our volumes are huge. And I'll give you an example. In order to do a US sales tax report on every month basis, right after the financial close happens or during that close process, we had to extract that data out of SAP, load it in a SQL database, run it against 5 other databases to get the necessary attributes needed for sales tax reporting. This required a lot of engineering hours every month to generate those reports and do those things. As part of ECC to S4 migration, we picked up that area as something that we're going to transform at the time of go live and automate as well. And that was one of the things that we did with the go live of migration itself. Now that report is running on business objects on SAP HANA database, and it is automated with the close monitoring, close cockpit as well. So as soon as you accounting team and controllers go and say, yes, I have completed and closed the fiscal periods for revenue postings, task automatically kicks off. It runs the sales tax reports, emails the reports directly to the tax auditors. And there is no human intervention anywhere in that process in order to do it. So we did some of that transformation with the migration, and we continue to identify more. HANA helped us to manage that 4 billion volumes that someone's talking about, but that was not the reason of us doing transformation any differently. It will impact your migration and downtime duration because of the volumes, but that is something that you have to get creative around, is how do I make it happen in the reasonable time frame?
And I think to add to that, those $4 billion transactions occurred because I was pulling in all the transactions from all the other historical ECC tables and bringing it into that universal journal table. And that's why there are so many records ended up loading there. But now all that data is available, for historical reporting and looking at, looking backward from when SAP started.
Great. So I do want to spend some time, and thanks everyone for the questions. Keep them coming. Talking about the importance of partnership. Obviously, we mentioned that this project kicked off, and then COVID happened, and you weren't able to do a lot of the typical activities. Dave, I'll start with you on this one. How did that change impact your engagement, and how did you overcome that challenge?
Like many customers, right, we have to work in this remote environment, and the tools have become very helpful, right? Be able to do webinars like this, being able to see people's faces, right? Being able to come more specific agendas as we're starting a meeting, right? Sometimes you can get in meetings and you can be whiteboarding, and it can be somewhat fluid, right? Now we need to be very structured when we go in. Here's the things that we want to accomplish. You can still do whiteboarding sessions. You can still, see people's expressions. That's one thing that, I try doing very often, is to make sure I'm watching people's faces to be able to see, are they looking at their phones? Are they looking at something else, right? Are they still being engaged, right? So it's important to be able to, hold meetings like that, but also be very diligent, take very copious notes. Often recordings, need to be done, and then, they're available, for people that necessarily can't make it at that particular time. So I think utilizing some of the tools is definitely required. Some due diligence to make sure that, we have good structure to the meetings. When COVID first started, right, everybody was like, didn't have a lot of meetings because you go tap people on the shoulder and just have those discussions. Now the calendaring tool is very important, right? Because I can't necessarily just go talk to somebody for 2 minutes, right? So it becomes more reliant on your calendars and making sure that, we schedule those topics are discussed, and the requirements are well known.
Great, and we did have some other questions come in. So one is, how did you identify which business processes should go through the transformation? How did you prioritize those?
Yes, we prioritize them based on the usage of specific business functions on the system. So SAP has a service by which you can, I'm forgetting the name, sorry about that, but that service actually allows you to identify which business processes are heavily used in the system, and it practically ranks them based on the usage. So we wanted to get the most out of any work that we do. So we started identifying which business processes are used the most, example, accounts payable or accounts receivable, which processes. And then we started the transformation, choosing the transformation items or projects in those areas first, which are the most utilized areas. Parallelly, we also started looking at things like shared services, other areas where we can deliver more value, where system is not being used today, but SAP S4 is capable of doing those functions in parallel. And that was more of a strategic view as to where do we want to see ourselves in next 2 to 3 years, and where do we want to see this platform grown up to in next 2 to 3 years. And that's where we started on both tracks, and we did selective transformation in both areas.
Great, and then another question came in. Do you use SAP tax solution to calculate taxes, or a bolt-on like Thomson Reuters and Vertex?
So we do not use tax softwares linked to SAP. We do have a tax software, Vertex, linked to our website that does the calculation, and we get all the data into SAP after the customer checks out an order. So a simple example is if you go to Amazon, well, I need some soap and some cream on Amazon. I'm going to select it. I'm going to put the checkout button. And as soon as you hit the checkout button, the order comes to SAP in the Vistaprint example. And so basically, if you can imagine, all the tax calculations, pricing already happened outside SAP in our e-commerce platform. And then it comes to SAP after the fact. So that is the model that we use here. But we do use Vertex in the company where we are using. Regardless, I think the gist of the question is, do we have bolt-ons? That makes your ECC to S4 migrations complicated. Yes, we have bolt-ons. And yes, they do add complexity and challenges as well. And yes, you are going to run into problems when you're talking to your partners on the bolt-ons. Are they supporting S4 or not? And those are the things that you need to include in pre-planning. If you need to do certain upgrades in ECC so that it is easier and you de-risk your ECC to S4 migration, you should start doing that. We had a couple of examples where we were on an older version of an bolt-on in ECC, and the newer versions were supported both on ECC and S4. So we did those upgrades in ECC itself so that we do not have to worry about that one more thing when we go to S4. So we had some of those cases as well.
And if I can add to that, Mukul, looking at some other customers, because you might work with a third party and they might say, oh yeah, we're S4 compliant, right? But are you S4, 1809, 2020, 2021? What is the exact release that they are, compliant with? And then also, if you go into the SAP HEC environment, there's also some additional certifications that need to be done by the third parties. So it's important to make sure that you truly have a good conversations with those third parties and be very, very specific.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question came in. Do you use SAP group reporting for consolidation?
No, we do not use SAP group reporting for consolidations because we are very decentralized company where each of our business units have ability to do systems they want to do. Vistaprint is the largest business unit with 90% of the total revenue from the Simpress as a group itself. And consolidation is done outside for the right reasons of our business requirements. It is not in group reporting. We do have plans to eventually migrate that to group reporting in a couple of years, which is on the roadmap.
Great. Keep the questions coming, guys. Another kind of softer question. Obviously, we believe that partner selection is just as important as the technology selection, and is an important consideration when you're looking to do any sort of digital transformation. From your perspective, what key qualities does Vistaprint look for when selecting a partner for really any implementation of this magnitude? What are those, kind of key things that you want in your partner?
That is a great question, and I'm going to answer it in two parts. Number one is the qualities that you look for in a migration project are different than the qualities that you look for doing specific transformations, and everyone has to be very honest and careful about it. The skill set, the capacity, the number of people needed for migration is different than transformation, and where and how and what kind of work it is being done. For doing a migration, it is very important to select a partner that has a very good understanding of the infrastructure and the technical capabilities that are very specific to migration. As an example, some DMO is one of the DMO database migration is one of the scenarios in some which is used to do the migration. The partner that you choose has to have that great understanding of how that tool works, how can you automate, what you can automate, and how can you make it optimized so that when you are moving the data from one database to another database, your output from one database and input to another database are optimized. You should not be able to output faster and input slower, because then you create bottleneck. In the transformation project, you need people who are very smart with the business processes, who can articulate and come up with the best practices and then the right way of doing it, instead of trying to fix the problems that we have right now. Business transformation, you need a mindset that is not fixing the current problem. You need, this is the right way to do it. Are we willing to accept that right way to do it? Or we are adjusting that right way to meet our business needs for the right reasons. So the partner is different. Other thing that you need to look at is the backend support from the partner itself. In an ECC to S4 type of migration, there will be specific areas where you're going to need higher capacity for, let's say, basis function or ABAP functions. Partners should have that enough capacity to be able to bring it on the project when needed, when you're in the crunch. If you need 2 more developers, 3 more developers only for 3-week, 4-week, 5-week duration, they should be able to bring it on. So you need to look at the ecosystem of that partner as well and say, how willing are you to bring something on a very short notice, even if it is something that I need only for 3 weeks instead of the entire 7-month duration. So these are some of the key things for you to look into a partner.
No, that's, and we've got some great questions in the chat, but before I get to those, Dave, I'll turn to you. In your experience, obviously Vistaprint has been successful. What are the key things as, a partner that you've seen from a customer perspective that allows them to be successful? What are those ingredients, that foundation that you think, oh, they're going to knock this one out of the park together?
Yeah, I think it goes to kind of what Mukul said. He's worked with, Gansys for some time, right? You want a partner that understands your environment, understands the business, understands the culture of the company, right? And so I think some of those intangibles to be able to work as a partner, being able to listen, really be that, trusted partner. Don't want somebody to be able to tell you this is exactly what needs to be done, without taking the input from the customer to say, how should this work? How do you want us to complement your team, right? Those kinds of things, I think are critical from that perspective. But yet, as Mukul said, they need to have a strong understanding. They need to be able to bring the skill sets as required, be able to have that flexibility, be able to ramp up and down as needed to make sure that the project's successful. So I think some of those are probably the key attributes. I'd like to think Gansys is there. So, but from that perspective, there's many SIs that are very capable of doing it. And I would also add, maybe make sure they understand what kind of accelerators, can be brought to the project to help simplify, to make sure that the lower the risk associated with any project, delays or any of those kinds of things.
Great. All right, so I'll get to some of these questions. Are there any challenges or issues with Concur and Ariba transition in an S4 Hana conversion?
So we do not use Ariba. We do use Concur. We have another software for procurement and indirect procurement. We did not have any challenges in migrating them over to the new S4, 1809, or even 2020 as a matter of fact, because we are already upgraded to 2020 as well. We went live with 1809, we are on 2020 already. So in neither of those versions, we have seen challenges with integrations with any of our applications. You will see challenges in encryption when you're talking to your banks or interacting with your banks for AP-based payments and treasury functions. And those things that you have to remediate when you're working on ECC to S4 migration, those are not 1809 to 2020 challenge. Those are ECC to S4 migrations. There are some old technologies that SAP has deprecated when you move to S4 HANA from ECC to S4 HANA. So some of those areas you have to plan, you have to be prepared for it, that you can invest time. And when you run your simplification items and readiness checklist, these things are going to be visible on that as well. And be ready for surprises. There might be things that might not show up on that list, and that will only knock on your door when you do your first conversion of your dev system or QA system. And you just have to be ready for it, and things will happen. I mean, I'm not going to lie, we had surprises, but we knew how to overcome those challenges. We got creative around it.
Yeah, and on the Ariba side, I would say on the Ariba side, I would say there is some work there. It's required to make some changes to it. But the integration between ECC and Ariba is strong, and the integration between Ariba and S4 is strong as well. So there's changes there, but fairly standard.
Great. Another question that came in: how did you manage the change management in the project? What were some of the resource challenges perhaps that you had to overcome?
I mean, that's a great reason and a great question as well, why we did Brownfield, to minimize the impact on our organization and our stakeholders. So when you're going from ECC to S4 as a Brownfield, you are, to some extent, have ability to control the impact on your stakeholders, where they need to be involved and how much they need to be involved. And that's very important in a global environment when you're not hiring their parallel roles so that someone can do their day job and someone can actually focus on the implementation. We gave them an experience that is out of the world, that qualifies them, that actually came back and said, why am I even validating something? Because you're giving me a validated and a measured report at the end of the migration that says, yes, I'm just doing my sign off at the end of the day for the Brownfield migration. And that is the mindset that you need to have, is the experience that you want to give it to your customers and stakeholders. And how. Number one, for change management, we went live with selective transformation. Things that were deprecated by SAP, we had to change those things. So we went for it. Things that we had alternate ways to do it, we rolled out those alternate ways as well and kept the traditional ways as well, and slowly started deprecating those old way of doing things, the custom programs and other things that we didn't need because now we had standard capabilities. So it was not a big bang saying everything has to change on day one. But from a platform perspective, that platform did change the same day for the whole thing. Lastly, we had good project management on the project, where we were able to manage testing timelines, expectations, test scripts, and then what needs to be tested by when. And we conducted our mocks in a way where it would not impact our partners' ability to do their business. Some of the activities were done during the most busy season for our accounting teams and manufacturing teams, and we still managed to navigate through that. And that's where the pre-planning comes into play. When you start and when you end the project, you have to really think about what is the busy season. So our business is a little cyclic, where we have October to December are our peak season. You all are doing your holiday shopping. You are doing your Christmas cards. You are doing, your vendors are doing gifts for their customers and things like those. All of that happens during these 3 months. And that's where our business is at the peak as well. So we have to manage through some of those by having two things. Number one, we had some champions regionally, not every country, but regionally, who understood and was able to transform the value drivers as well as the need to do this. Secondly, one of this initiative was actually supported and pushed by all the way from our CFO and CEO. And we had the support of our leadership to make this happen in that 7-month duration, not a 2-year-long program. We wanted to minimize that. So we were able to manage the change management, because by minimizing the change and also doing selective changes and in increments, not do it in one big bang. So that helped us to manage this process.
Great. Other question that came through, did S/4HANA replace BPC for financial planning and BW for reporting?
Lauren, you want me to answer that?
So the question was, did S/4HANA replace BPC for financial planning and BW for reporting? Yeah, I mean, if anybody has a question.
Lauren, do you want me to answer that?
Sure.
Yeah, so the next evolution of BPC from SAP is SAP Cloud for Planning, which has much of the same capabilities BPC did in the past. I have no idea if Vistaprint uses BPC or not, and I'm curious about planning, consolidation, and then the broader BI strategy. Are you using kind of an SAP first approach, or do you still allow kind of any tool for the job across the businesses?
You're not going to like my answer, Brian.
That's okay. I'd rather have the truth.
No.
Thank you, by the way, and good to hear your voice and see your face again.
Good to see you again as well. So we did use BPC, and we retired it 2 weeks back, practically. So again, no reason for BPC is supported on S/4HANA as well, because it pulls the data from BW queues, and that are still valid and applicable on BPC. We did a POC on SAC a year back, and SAC was not ready enough based on our complex requirements of business planning and consolidation. SAC was not ready enough. So we went with a third-party tool, a non-SAP solution for planning purposes. But that also integrates with SAP using the CDS views and other capabilities, the newer OData services, newer technologies that SAP S/4HANA supports. And that is how we are doing it. One of the questions is the challenges that we ran into around reporting and analytics. That is all around based on the volumes that we have. Because of the large volumes, we had to optimize the CDS views that we have created in our system to do the reporting. And those volumes are immense. Even when we went from 1809 to 2020, some of the standard CDS views had to be optimized by SAP, because those views did not work for us in 2020, but they did work for us in 1809. So based on the changes in the systems and how things happen, you're going to need SAP support to even adjust the standard offerings based on your data volumes. And again, we were a very good test for even for SAP perspective. Can we do this views and these Fiori apps instead of minutes into seconds? Can I load this app in seconds instead of minutes? So we worked with SAP quite a bit, not just in ECC to S4, but even 1809 to 2020 migration. And together we fixed a lot of standard SAP stuff that are now rest of the customers are going to benefit from.
Thank you for that.
Great, and we've got about 10 minutes left, and we've got some good wrap-up questions in here as well. But kind of sticking with the analytics theme, what was the biggest challenge for recreating your analytics and reporting from a data perspective?
As I said, it was the CDS views. Optimizing those CDS views to be able to handle the large volumes was our biggest challenge. Everything else was, we were able to do it in standard offerings. And I do recall there are quite a few custom CDS views that we have to create. And there are quite a few that we were able to use out of the box as well. And that is the combination that you have to be careful about. Don't run those CDS views only in your dev system, because dev systems do not have that data. Run it on QA systems where you actually have the data itself from a quantity and quality perspective, and see what things work for you and what are you going to need to customize. So that is a very important aspect for any migrations. You have to pre-plan it. Which system are you going to convert first? Is it going to be a Sandbox system, dev system, or your QA system? If you go to an implementation partner, every partner has their own approach. Every customer has their own approach. A lot of implementation partners that I interviewed during the selection process there was one theme that was consistent is do your Sandbox conversion first. And my challenge was, why not QA system, which is the true testament of a refresh from a production system. And why would we not do that to actually test out what is broken and what's not broken in the volume of the data set? And you have to be careful as to what you're going to get out of it and what are the goals of converting a QA system versus a sandbox system first. So look at those, and I think some of these things you're going to learn during the building of the reporting. Once you have the CDS views optimized, rest becomes easy enough in a S4 world to build in terms of reports.
Great, and you alluded to this earlier. Obviously, no project is perfect. There are always going to be, surprises or things that kind of change mid-flight for whatever reason. So if you could change one thing as part of the initial migration project, what would it be? And if you could give us an example of your biggest surprise that you needed to resolve as part of the migration.
So let me answer the second question first. Some of the surprises. So we had to do one of the SLT parallel ledger implementations in middle of the project that was not planned. My team, because SAP, we were not able to migrate certain assets, certain ledgers, and that was not supported in S4. So we had to do one of those small projects. It was a mini project that my team did it on the fly. That was one surprise. The second surprise was we had certain technical challenges, specifically when you are trying to deprecate some of the older technologies. How you do it is very important. Don't leave it halfway through. If you're deprecating, deprecate it all the way through. If you leave traces behind, it's going to create even a bigger mess. So we had some of those challenges as well that we had to overcome. Now, if I had to change one thing, that one thing would be putting little more emphasis on SAP to share their product roadmap. As an example, we went live with Fiori Central Hub, but then a year later, we switched to embedded. So we did that small migration from Central Hub to embedded. When we selected, we had two options. When we were starting our implementation, do you want to go Central Hub? Do you want to go embedded? And we chose Central Hub based on what we knew of and what SAP could share. And in 2 quarters, SAP came back and said, we are going to invest only in embedded, not in Central Hub. And that changed our opinion as well. We want to utilize the innovation. We want to utilize the capabilities provided by SAP and not be left behind. Why would I create 10 custom apps when I can activate 10 standard apps for the same function? Customization or building something from ground up for 10 apps might take a year. Activation might take my team, 5 days to activate 10 apps. So you can see the difference in the level of effort that it would take to do it. So that is one thing that I would say is have more SAP skin in the game from a product perspective to understand what is the future investment path. You don't want to be implementing a product that you want to deprecate in 6 months again. So that is one thing that I would hope you all can change, at least for your implementations.
That's great. So we've got just a few minutes left. I've got 2 wrap-up questions, and then I'll pass it back to Megan. First is, what's next? You've gone live with phase 1, you're in phase 2. What does 2022 look like for Vistaprint?
We have a lot of exciting work. We are going live with extended warehouse management. This extended warehouse management version that we need is only supported on S4 2020. It is one of the latest versions that has a lot of out-of-the-box capabilities that we would have to otherwise customize in Ewm -1 version, the current version -1. So we are going to go live with the latest version. We are doing GRC. We are doing another upgrade next year. As I said, I want to upgrade my SAP system every year. I want to treat it like a public cloud where an upgrade starts and ends in 4 months. It cannot be a 15-month-long project from an upgrade perspective. The last upgrade we did was 4.5 months. The next upgrade that we're going to do is probably going to be 3.5 to 4 months. And then it will get optimized and we're going to get better at it. There are shared services that we're doing. There are AP automation that we're doing. There is IRPA that we're doing. There is AI that we are implementing in S4 as well. So there is a lot of work that's happening to even things like GRIR benefit. I mean, today, one of the things that accountants spend a lot of time is in GRIR. Can we automate that process using the AI engine that is built in S4 Hana? And that is one thing that we are doing and exploring right now. So there is a lot of exciting work in next 12 months. I do not know 12 months is enough to do that or not. But anytime we have set goals, we have pulled it through. So I'm hoping that my team will be capable to pull these through goals as well.
So what you're saying is you're going to be bored in 2022. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, no,
Right.
no. We are going to be super bored, not just bored, super bored. We're going to make it more exciting.
No, that's awesome to hear. And, as you know, we're joined by a lot of folks who are, kind of where you were in 2019, know they're ready to move, looking to, kickstart those conversations, help build the business case. If you could leave them with one piece of advice, now on the other side of this, what would that be?
Pre-planning. That is one magical word that I'll say is plan your activities, plan your phase 0, which I call it before you start your migration phase. Plan your phase 0 very well and very thoroughly. The more work you can do with a smaller team in phase 0, that is the amount of de-risking that you're gonna get to do phase 1, which is the actual migration from ECC to S4. And that is very important. That also opens up the doors for teams to do ECC to S4 HANA and learn S4 as a platform at that point of time. I'll share one small story from my team itself. When we started ECC to S4 HANA, there was only one employee in Vistaprint who actually self-certified himself with SAP on S4 HANA. Everyone else learned on the job on how to use S4 and what are the things and what are not. So a lot of teams are scared of that as well. And a lot of companies don't want to do it unless their entire team is trained on S4. And I would say that is not right. If your team is motivated, they are learning and they can learn, they will learn very well even on the job while that migration is happening. You just need to have the right mindset. So pre-planning is very important.
And I agree. Just to add to that, I mean, pre-planning doesn't mean just planning, right? There's activities like Mukul indicated that there's small projects that you're doing in there, whether that's making sure your customer and vendor integration is working properly when you go from ECC to S4, whether that's looking at your custom code and analyzing, what of that stuff is no longer used, and let's make sure that we only bring across the key activities that are currently being used and make sure that transformation, at least those initial ones, are identified. Who are we going to look at? If you're looking for some business value, what's that organization that's going to want that? Is it finance? Is it procurement? Is it manufacturing, right? So because some of the customers that I see want to deliver some additional value, in that initial go live. And other ones are, let's go ahead and get there, just like Vistaprint did, and then have a quick follow on, business value addition.
And it is a series of projects that you're going to do on ECC in phase 0. Dave downplayed it by saying 2 or 3, but yeah, we did quite a few projects as well just to help us de-risk the project.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Mukul. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everyone who joined. Thank you for all of your great questions. It always makes for a good discussion. Certainly, if you have more questions that we weren't able to get to today or something crosses your mind later, we're happy to help facilitate a connection and get you an answer. So with that, I will turn it back to Megan.
Yep, thanks, Lauren. So we will send out the on-demand to the attendees here, so please feel to distribute that to your team. If your organization is, evaluating options, gradually moving towards that ERP transformation or anything else really that we discussed today, I'd be happy to facilitate a conversation or introduction with the Ansys team. So the moment you have all been waiting for, like I mentioned earlier, Ansys has graciously offered a free S4HANA roadmap assessment. Again, it's a 2-day workshop and it'll allow you the opportunity to connect with them to identify those tactical and strategic initiatives that you guys have, help give a roadmap for you guys to get you on your way for your ERP transformation. So I would like to announce that Allison Transmission has won our assessment. So I'll connect you guys with the Ansys team for next steps. So yay. Again, thank you all for your time today. This does conclude our session, and I wanted to give a big thanks to our guest speakers, Mukul and Dave. And thank you for the other attendees as well for your participation.
Yep. Appreciate all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you very
everyone.
much. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your week. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.